What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So actually I had originally planned to do a video talking about the changes that Riot had promised for the canceled Divers rework, but when I was making the video I found that actually a lot of the things that got canceled from the Divers rework are things that I've talked about in videos before, and a lot of the information was just something that would have been repeated from past videos. So instead I wanted to break it down and talk about canceled releases as a whole, include some things that were outside of the scope of the Divers rework, as well as some of the things from the Divers rework that we haven't actually talked about yet, and any other big changes that Riot had planned to make recently but ended up canceling. And it's a lot of really cool stuff, so I hope you guys enjoy. And just before we start, we have a quick message from our sponsor, GGEsports.com. On their website, you play as an analyst predicting the outcome of esports matches, but you don't use any real money, just their in-game currency, which you get for free and can use to win real prizes like RP, phones, and laptops. And right now they're actually doing a giveaway for a brand new iPhone 7 on Facebook. All you need to do is check out the link in the description to their Facebook post and then follow the instructions there to enter. Good luck, and let's jump right into the video. Now the first release I wanted to cover was a mini rework that was actually scheduled for Aurelion Sol. As you can probably tell from Aurelion Sol's somewhat low play rate, particularly in low elos, Aurelion Sol is definitely a champion that does take quite a bit of time to get used to playing. You know, players tend to pick him up thanks to his really cool visuals and very unique and interesting gameplay, but he's just very difficult to learn at the start because of his very intimidating skill floor and the fact that he's such a unique champion. And Riot had originally planned a mini rework to address this, as well as some other issues that he has with balancing and his mechanics and all sorts of stuff like that, with the aim of overall making Aurelion Sol easier to learn how to play, while also making his abilities feel a lot more fluid, a lot more satisfying to use and play with, while also hoping to address any balancing issues that he might have had. The scope was apparently supposedly going to be similar to Shyvana's mini rework, but Riot eventually decided that the direction that the mini rework for Aurelion Sol was headed would end up just disappointing expectations, while also making pretty much all of the current Aurelion Sol players really unhappy with the results. And so they scrapped the update, but we expect they'll be keeping an eye on Aurelion Sol in the future, since he does still seem to be in need of improvements from the perspective of Riot that makes him a little bit more accessible to players trying to pick him up for the first time. Now the next topic is actually related to part of the Runes update that's coming in the preseason, and it's the brand new starting items that Riot had originally teased as a part of the Runes Reforged post that they originally made when they announced the update and changes to the Runes and Mastery system. Changing the Runes and Mastery system has some really intense consequences. It's something that really just affects everything in the game. So many things that you wouldn't even think of. And one of those is that you're really going to be receiving a lot less raw stats at the start of the game than you would before the update. So the level 1 balance for most champions just gets completely flipped on top of its head. And one of Riot's proposed solutions, which is I think the solution that they're actually going to be going through with, was to tweak the champion's base stats directly, but they also discussed and at least announced that they were going to add new starting items and revamp existing ones, since the current lineup for starting items is actually pretty limited and for the most part is quite linear. Doran's Dagger is a great example of this, featuring 12% attack speed along with some health, life on hit, and bonus minion damage for only 450 gold. This could have been a pretty lucrative option for some champions that are maybe losing attack speed from their runes, but Riot Meddler confirmed that the changes to starting items have been scrapped for now. Apparently Riot did spend a lot of time investigating the best way to address this sort of level 1 stat difference with the runes change, and decided that working overtime on runes and the base champion stat changes was just going to be the best solution for the short term. He did go on to say that the starting items are still something that they probably want to look at in the future though, although it would likely be at least a year away. Now a year away is actually pretty far, so hopefully Riot will make enough champion changes to the base stats so that we won't really need changes to the starting items for now. Now Riot Meddler made no promises that we will ever see the new starting items, but he did mention that there is potential for them to use the starting item space to help break up the meta a little bit. For example, offering things like a starting item for mages that allows them to work in the bot lane as an alternative to playing a marksman, something that would potentially make a champion like Ziggs bot lane that we saw quite recently a lot more optimal as a bot lane choice for the overall team composition and lane synergy. And while answering questions about melee carries in the bot lane, Riot Meddler mentioned that it's less likely for them to succeed because the marksman support range combo makes it really difficult for a melee carry to survive. So the only way for it to work would be sort of to create this starting item that shrugs off some poke damage, but at the same time that could potentially have severe consequences for the rest of the game. Now as a result, Riot are spending time looking at mages in the bot lane again, since they already work a lot more effectively than melee carries to begin with. This implies that Riot had actively tested out some kind of mage carry bot lane item in the past, and although we haven't seen what those exact items might have looked like, we might get to see some new iteration of this sort of concept in the future. However, since he had already mentioned that Riot aren't really going to think about new starting items until next year at the earliest, that means that the mage carry item that they tested and messed around with has essentially been cancelled and probably isn't going to show up until then, if at all. Next up, I wanted to focus a little bit on the aspects of the cancelled Divers rework that we haven't actually talked about in previous videos. So for those who don't know, the Divers were originally intended to be the next class update following after the tank update, but despite having reasonable success with these bulk champion group reworks, Riot decided that the cons were outweighing the pros and decided to cancel this whole structure of doing these class updates as a whole, effectively canceling the Divers update in the process. And this has left quite a few champions without any confirmed timeline for improvements, and a lot of champions that had reworks that were in development that actually are just cancelled now. So the first example of this is Pantheon. So with the cancellation of the Divers update, Pantheon's rework has essentially been cancelled as well. Unfortunately, Pantheon's issues are actually quite substantial. He's got a lot of really outdated visuals in the game, and he's a little bit of a weird character and has a really hardcore feast or famine nature. If he doesn't get really fed at the start of the game, he just falls off really hard, as his kit kind of doesn't really enable a very solid late game playstyle. Now when Riot cancels future class updates, they did mention that they were going to aim to rework these champions that had their reworks cancelled one by one, and that probably does mean that Pantheon could be a pretty good candidate for a full-scale rework in the future, or at least a mini sort of update. Rather than settling for a few minor changes though, with the full-scale rework with Pantheon they'd be able to update his model, improve his skins, and turn him into a much more well-rounded champion, so overall I'd say that's probably the way they're going to go with him. Now another champion that was cancelled as a part of the Divers update was Jarvan. Now Riot Meddler mentioned that Jarvan's main issue is a lack of clearly defined strengths and weaknesses, because without those it's a little bit difficult to find the right balance levers to tune him. It's really difficult to know how to buff him without making him overpowered, or to nerf him without making him unplayable. So one of the biggest complaints about Jarvan that the community tends to have is his ultimate Cataclysm, which is supposedly able to create impassable terrain, but has really just had so many issues for the longest time and is just not really that reliable of a way to actually trap a character inside of it. So hopefully this is something that Riot could address with their changes to his gameplay, make him a lot more reliable of a choice. It's also worth considering that Riot does view Jarvan as a diver rather than a tank style character, so it's possible that they might choose to remove his ultimate entirely in favor of something a little bit different or maybe even completely new. However, you have to admit that as a Jarvan player, you wouldn't really be all that happy if they removed the Cataclysm ultimate, so it's not exactly something that I would personally see as being likely, but there's not really all that specific information, at least from Riot, on the actual matter of a potential upcoming rework from Jarvan. Riot Meddler did also note that they consider Jarvan to be in a better spot currently than a lot of the other champions that were cancelled from the Divers rework in terms of both visuals and gameplay. So since he seems to be kind of a low priority, maybe we'll see kind of like a mini update from him in the future, who knows. Now the last thing we wanted to cover is another part of the Divers update that went up in smoke with the cancellation of the entire thing, and that was diver item changes. So since the design team is usually thinking about the entire class during a class update, it's really easy for them to also at the same time revamp the items. And we've seen this really with every single class update they've done pretty much. The tanks update, the mages update, the AD carries update, it seems to be like the time to update items. And with the Divers update being cancelled, as a result, the changes to the items are being cancelled with it. Now instead, they'll likely consider item changes on more of a case-by-case basis, which may mean that we never see a total overhaul of a class update item style again, but maybe Riot has their own plans for class item updates that they just haven't really shared with us yet, since a class can really only be as strong as the items created for it, and the items are really what balances the entire class as a whole most of the time, really. So I imagine they could potentially look to solve a lot of the diver class's issues with changes to items based on the research of what was already done while the divers update was still being considered. Thanks for watching the video, everybody. I just wanted to take some time here at the end to talk some more about our sponsor, GGEsports.com. Right now, they're doing a really cool event around the Worlds Tournament where everyone gets a ton of extra free currency to use and win prizes with, and they've also got some really big plans for new content and upcoming revamps in the future months, so definitely check them out at GGEsports.com if you haven't already, and remember to check out the iPhone 7 giveaway at the link in the description below. Either way though, that's just about going to cover all of the League of Legends canceled releases that happened pretty recently. Hope you guys enjoyed a look into the inside of the Riot developers. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you didn't enjoy the video, feel free to hit the dislike button too. Again, thanks for watching, subscribe if you want, and I'll see you guys next time.